everyone, this is Des, and you are listening to the Wellness Project powered by Spotlight Coalition. On today's episode, I speak with Johnnie Mazzocco. She is a published fiction writer, award-winning screenwriter, teacher, as well as a book and course content developer, and the creator of Writing Through the Body, and the managing editor of the magazine Dark Moon Lilith. She's a retired adjunct professor of writing and holds degrees in fiction writing, English and film studies, women's studies, and digital arts. So today, as you might have guessed, I am talking with Johnnie on everything writing, how writing can boost somebody's self-esteem, how it can improve your mental health, how it can be an expression of self-love, and how writing can heal the world. So if you are a writer or you're interested in writing, creative writing, journaling, nonfiction writing, fiction writing, then definitely stay tuned for this episode. It's going to be fantastic. I can't wait to speak with Johnnie about how writing can heal us and the world. Everyone, I'm so excited. I'm here with Johnnie Mazzocco. She is a writer. Johnnie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm really excited to talk all things writing with you because I know you're a writer and you talk a lot about how it impacts your life and people's lives and how it's a really like healthy practice and everything. So I really want to get into that. So I guess I just want to start off with, how has writing impacted your life?
Well, so many ways. I have a story to tell about that actually. And the biggest way it impacted me was many years ago, I started writing a novel that I have now finished and it's out to beta readers. So I'm very excited about that. But it's been a long, drawn out process. And, I would go for years and not touch it and then come back to it. And I wrote probably 5 different versions of it. And this last one is the one that really was it. But what happened all those years ago is I started writing it, and the story that my subconscious wanted to tell, it's like it had a message for me. And I thought I was writing about this fictional character. But what ended up happening was I thought it was a story about amnesia, and it ended up being a story about repressed memories of abuse. Then as I worked on it, I realized, oh, this happened to me. Needless to say, it turned my life upside down for a while. But it really set me on a spiritual path, and this path that I continue to be on of just, learning more about myself and my own inner evolution. For those reasons, I have found writing to be extremely healing. And I always joke about this, but it's very true. I sometimes write things and then they happen, or I write characters and then I meet a person who really fits that character. I don't know. I say it's my spiritual practice, but there's a certain kind of magic around writing for me that really shows me that when I do it, I am in touch with, things deep inside myself and far outside myself. Besides just, helping me personally, I find it really fascinating.
That is fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. That
Mhm.
is a really powerful story. Yeah, I could definitely tell the power in writing. Absolutely. To go off along with that, why do you feel that writing is something that's important for a lot of people, a practice that is important in someone's life?
Even if we write fiction, and I think especially when we write fiction, it frees us up to access parts of ourselves that we don't on a regular basis. And there's something that happens in the mind. I have found that when we are writing about a fictional character, so something that's separate from us, it just gives us more perspective, I guess, rather than trying to write about our own lives, because we can only see so much about ourselves, right? And when we write about another character, it really allows us to see this person in a multifaceted way. And we don't have to worry about our own blind spots. But then the reality is, I believe that all of my characters are parts of me. Some part of me that might be hidden in the corner of my psyche comes out. And so in the end, I always end up learning something about myself. So for that reason, I think it's just a really powerful way to tune into oneself. And just the practice of it, I know for me and for a lot of other writers, I know that the regular perpetual practice of writing is very grounding. I mean, it helps me, it helps my mental health. This past year and a half has really proven that to me. It's been very difficult at times with a pandemic and all. And it's what allowed me to finish the novel. It allowed me to start a collection of short stories. It allowed me to start publishing a magazine that I used to publish. So to me, stories, words that take story form, I think are very healing because it allows for that human connection that I think we all want. Whether it's just hearing about someone else's story that is sort of like ours and validates us, or whether it's something that, maybe opens up our awareness to something that we hadn't known before. I just find it incredibly healing for the writer and the reader.
Yeah, so that is something I wanted to talk about. You do say on your website that you do believe that writing can heal the world. And can you talk about that a little bit more? In which ways do you feel that writing can heal both the writer and the reader?
So I think of things in energetic terms, oftentimes, not only that way, but I think writing can work that way. So I think of that, the kind of the, it's almost cliche visual or adage that people often use where if you throw a pebble in the water, the reverberation. So I feel like people do that in the world energetically. And I think whatever we put out has this far reaching effect. I think of it in terms like sort of like the butterfly effect. Say if I tell a story that resonates with someone and heals some part of their heart or their soul or their psyche, that's going to change them, even if a little bit, and it will change what they do in the world. And then what they do will change the next person, and on and on and on. Through sort of this domino effect, I guess, is how I see it. Stories can heal that way. And I think the more we do it, the more healing we will see. And I mentioned the magazine. One of the things not just as a writer myself, but I think also, as a writing teacher and then as a publisher, I really feel like my mission and passion in life is to heal the world with stories. And like I've always said, whether it's the ones I write and tell or the ones I have helped other people write and tell. The name of the magazine is Dark Moon Lilith, and the subtitle is Dedicated to the Wondrous Strange. Wondrous strange is a phrase from a Shakespeare play. And I love that term because I feel that in the world, there's so much that so many of us don't understand about other people, other cultures, people who are not like us. And I also think there are things happening in other realms that our awareness can't comprehend. So what I focus on publishing in that magazine is, things that go unseen and unheard and that may be considered kind of fringe. So it's everything from like spirituality, the occult, to social activism, environmentalism. So I'm open to a wide range of topics as long as they are things that perhaps are topics or from people who are marginalized. I guess that's kind of a broad brushstroke answer to why I think stories can heal the world and how.
No, that's great. That's really great. I love that. I absolutely love that. So I want to go back to also what you said. You said you also feel that writing can actually improve somebody's mental health. Can you talk about that a bit? Do you think it could actually improve somebody's mood, their self-esteem, their self-worth?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'll say first, science has proven this to be the case. They've done studies and have found when people are writing expressively, that their mental health has improved, even their physical health. So I can't quote this study, but I read about one a while back. They took a group of men who had HIV and found that their T cell counts reduced after I think like a 3-month period of writing expressively. So it does impact our physicality when we write. And I think part of the reason for that, and then the mental health as it aligns with that, is it just kind of unloads a burden that perhaps we're carrying. Or for me, I know, there's sometimes thoughts that I have that I think if I were to say this to someone, they would think I was crazy, which happens quite often, I will say. And to put something in a story can kind of put it outside myself. So like I said, it kind of lightens the burden of that thought or that feeling. And when I can give it to a fictional character and help them work it out, then it's like kind of by proxy, I go through this process of transforming that feeling within myself. And so that's why I feel like I have relationships with my characters. Like I don't see them as, like I said, separate from me. I feel like we build relationships. And what I've always said about Miranda's Garden, my novel, is that she and I became a team. And I agreed to tell her story with honesty and integrity. And she helped me navigate this really difficult time in my life. because it was her that she is the one who wanted to start gardening. And so I thought, oh, okay, maybe if I work with the earth, this will help this like morbid depression that I was going through. And she wanted to start running. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do that. And all of those things helped me. And so I feel like the writing just in and of itself helps my mental health, but then also the things that my characters direct me toward also help me in that way.
Okay, that's great. That's really interesting. Do you think that also goes for somebody that maybe doesn't really know how to write with characters? Like maybe they're just journaling or they're, expressing themselves in that way using writing as an outlet. Do you think that is still helpful?
Yeah, definitely. So I don't journal. I know it helps a lot of people. I always say that, and I think there's some truth to this. I'm a Cancer, and I feel like we just kind of naturally process emotions like 24/7 because we feel so many of them. We just kind of have to do that. I do think that, just kind of like there is something about using the body, just an aside, and we can come back to this if it fits in, but I created this method for writers called writing through the body because writing is such a physical act. I mean, if we sit and do it all day or for a few hours, it's physically draining. And so there is something happening in the body when we write. I think just using the act of using a pen or pencil and physically putting words on the page, even if it's about our own inner thoughts, yes, I absolutely think that also benefits a lot of people's mental health.
And how do you think that writing is an expression of self-love?
Oh, yeah. This also relates to writing through the body that I mentioned. So it's based on the 7 chakras of the body. And just briefly, if anyone listening doesn't really know what the chakras are, they are energy centers in the body that run up and down the spine. When those are all flowing and everything's moving freely, it's what a lot of people would call chi. So it's our life force. When I was working with clients, I would always tell them that if you are compelled to write or to tell a story, that is your life force wanting to move up and out of you. When we don't do that, when we keep it stuffed, then I think that can lead to all sorts of things like mental health, physical health issues, spiritual dis-ease, all of that. And so I think in honoring that impulse to write or to create anything is the most profound act of self-love that we can have, because I do think, like I said, stifling it is harmful for us, and honoring it is the ultimate expression of self-love, in my opinion.
Great. Yeah, I love that. I agree. I think that's fantastic. And now, as for creating a writing ritual, can you talk about that a bit? Somebody that maybe has the idea they want to get into writing, they don't really know how to start. Should that be daily? What kind of goes into that writing ritual? Maybe you could share your writing ritual with us.
I will say first, it's different for everyone, and I think it takes a while. So we oftentimes in writing talk about, finding your writing voice, which takes some time. And I think the same is true for figuring out what your own writing rhythm is. And I think it's just a matter of trying different things. And I know for me in the beginning, I was so compelled to write that I just did it, every moment I could. And I mean, I wrote as a little girl, and I always thought I would grow up and be a novelist. And then life took me other directions. And it wasn't until I had all 3 of my kids and they were very young that I started writing again. So in those days, it was a matter of just being able to find a few moments here and there. And so back before iPhones existed, I had a little handheld recorder. And so this was part of my practice. If I had ideas throughout the day as I was shuttling them around or, taking care of them, I would just say things into this little recorder. It actually became kind of part of our family, and my kids knew who Miranda was. And they would ask me about her because they heard me talking about her. So I think that's one thing, first of all, is, for me, it was good just on the fly to have something to record like that. So that might be something somebody might do, is just in their iPhone, just a little voice note to themselves. I could go off on a big digression here, but I won't too much. I will say that there are so many things that trigger people's ideas, give them ideas for stories or what to write about. I think even just making note of those random things that we encounter throughout the day can also help. writing little notes to ourselves. I also used to jot things down on any piece of paper that was handy, receipts, napkins, whatever. And I think that's part of it. And, I said I don't journal, but I do keep a writer's notebook where I jot things down. I feel like if something has kind of leaped out at you and resonates with you, there's something in you that is saying, okay, I want to do more with this. And maybe we don't know in that moment, but making a note of it can be the first step in creating a practice. For myself, I need big chunks of time to write. I can do some editing and that kind of thing in short amounts of time, but I really like settling in. And I will say now at this point in my life, my kids are grown, they're in their 30s. I live with my cat. And so I'm very privileged in the amount of time that I have. And so I recognize that not everyone has that. In July, the first 2 weeks of August, I quit everything so I could revise the novel. And I would work on it like 10 or 12 hours a day.
Wow.
And I'm able to do that. Not everyone can do that. I also know people who have written books and they can write, like they said, they wrote in 15 and 30-minute spurts. So a lot of it has to do with your life. And I think going easy on yourself and not feeling like a failure if something doesn't work is really important, because there's so many factors to kind of getting in flow when we write that, yeah, I feel like that would be a whole other long conversation. But in terms of just also, I think creating space to write is really important for a practice. So, thinking about your surroundings and what you need. And like one of my rituals when I write is I have to have something to drink. I just have to. And go back and forth between keyboard and then I print. Like I printed my entire novel out 3 times over those 6 weeks I worked on it, because sometimes I need paper. And when I write, I have to write with a certain kind of pencil. So it's those little things that sound a little quirky, but they all kind of play into creating a practice. Some people like to burn a candle, right? So anyway, those are just some thoughts. Long answer, I know, to your question,
No,
but
that's great. Yeah, no,
yeah.
that's really great. And I did want to touch on that a bit. So I know you have that time now, but you started writing again when you had your kids. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because I know something that holds people back a lot is they feel like they don't have the time or the energy. So they're working full time, they're commuting, they have kids that they come home to, chores, cooking, responsibilities, their partner. So it's a lot. And I know that writing, as much of an important practice as it is, it gets put on the back burner very often for people who really want to write. Do you have any tips for those people or any thoughts at all?
Yeah, there's a course I created when I was just kind of as a lead into this. When I was working with clients in the very beginning, I discovered that we would spend the first 3 months of me helping them get to a place where they could actually start writing. And so
Wow.
I created this separate course to help people do that. And one of the things that I had them do is it's a step-by-step process of kind of deciding to write a book or deciding to devote oneself to writing. It really means creating some changes in life. Like if we want to start a new diet regimen, or if we want to start yoga, anything we want to make as a regular part of our lives, it means we have to make some other changes, right? And the people around us have to be aware of that and hopefully supportive. So one of the practices I would have people do is really kind of make a list of their support system, who those people were, the things that they need to do to support themselves, and then be very diligent and purposeful and intentional about figuring out times when that could be. So for instance, if I worked with someone who had small kids and a partner, it would mean, depending on how old the kids were, talking to the entire family and saying, look, this is really important to me. I want to do this. Can we all agree that I will use this day and time to do that? And then hopefully those people will respect that. And then once there's these like kind of neural grooves that start to be etched in the brain, once we do something regularly, it just becomes habit, right? After a while, we get to the point, like I always have with exercise, when I'm not doing it, then I don't feel right. And so then it becomes something that we are just compelled to do, and we just make it happen. It always, I think, feels awkward in the beginning. I know some people just decide, okay, I'm going to get up an hour earlier in the morning, or I'm going to stay up an hour later after everyone goes to bed. And so I think between those things, this deep hunger to do it, and then also asking for the assistance of people around us is one way to get started.
Okay, that's really great. Yeah, that's a great tip. So, what about those people that feel like they're not a good writer, that they haven't found their voice? How do you recommend that they get started to feel comfortable? Because I think a lot of it is maybe insecurity, maybe imposter syndrome, feeling insecure.
Yeah, absolutely. That is very normal. And I will even say, like, for people who have written for a long time, I think we all get imposter syndrome at some point. When I first started writing seriously, my teachers would always say, and this helped me a lot, so I will pass it on, find authors that you like a lot and read them and start to make note of what it is you like about them.
Okay.
Not necessarily try to mimic them and copy their voice, but if something about their writing resonates with you, then that's probably something within yourself that you can tap into at some point. And so I think that's a good first step. And then I would just say blatantly, like, write your own thing, but try to copy them as you're writing your own thing and see what happens. Eventually, your own voice will start to emerge. Then also another little tip is free writes. So for those who don't know what those are, you set a timer for 10, 15 minutes to start with, and you start with an idea. It can be anything, and you start writing, and you don't stop writing for that full time.
Okay.
Even if you get stuck, you just say, I'm stuck, I don't know what to write. And eventually it's like magic. Something else will come out. And that can be a good way to start. I always equate it to like flushing out the hose in the spring after it's been sitting. That's what those free writes are for. And then also writing with the opposing hand
Oh.
can access different parts of your psyche, and some interesting things come out of that as well.
Oh, very interesting. Okay, those
Yeah.
are really great tips. Something I wanted to touch on, I don't know, how much you would have to say about it, but I think there is, and I don't know the exact statistics or anything, but it's something like, I don't know, whatever number percentage of Americans can only read at like a fourth grade level or write at a fourth grade level or something like that. Do you have anything to say about this issue with people have a difficult time reading and maybe don't really know how to spell, don't know grammar, things like that? Is there any way that they could kind of get around this?
So I always would tell my clients this, that, if you have a story to tell, just tell the story, and making it all pretty and perfect. That's what editors are for. For me, that would be very meaningful to work with someone who had a story to tell, but had those challenges, because that's what I've done for decades, right? Is teach writing and help people make their writing look pretty. And so I think there are a lot of people out there in the world who are happy to work with people who have stories to tell, but maybe don't have the mechanics down, right? And of course, again, that involves, kind of a financial investment that not everyone has, but there are people out there who do like volunteer work and pro bono work. And so I do think there's a way to still get your story on the page and then get help kind of polishing it up, for sure. Mhm.
Okay, absolutely. And I know there's services on places like Fiverr and things like that too. Maybe that would be a little more affordable for somebody. But that's great. I think that's an absolutely great response, great tip for people that maybe are feeling insecure about their ability to write, their spelling, things like that. So that's fantastic. So focus on the story. That's great.
Yes. Yeah.
And in what ways do you feel like writing can almost humble a person?
So many ways. Yeah, it's hard, right? So writing is hard. It's not easy for anyone. And I think the misnomer often is that we see these perfectly packaged, polished books on the shelf, and we just think, oh wow, I could never do that. But writing a book is an absolute production. It's a collaborative process. And granted, the writer does need to sit in his or her space, be alone, and do this for a certain stage. But there are editors, there are agents, there are publishers there, and like I mentioned earlier, beta readers who are reading my novel right now. So much goes into it, and it's humbling because it doesn't always go well. You know, you can sit down one day to write, and this has happened to me plenty of times. You know, I read something I've written that felt right in the moment, and then when I look back at it, I just think that really is not very good. That's not what I intended. And I always think of a quote. Virginia Woolf is one of my absolute idols, and one of her quotes is, "I assure you, all of my novels were first rate before they were written." And I always like to remind people of that, because it's very hard to make the product, if we want to call it that, match the vision in the mind.
Mm-hmm.
That part of it is very humbling. There's so many balls to juggle, you know, whether it's just like the mechanics we were talking about earlier, the prose, the style of writing, the structure of the story, the character development. I mean, it's just feels almost endless while we're doing it. And that's the humbling part, is being able to stay with it and sort through it and still believe in it when it's not going well, and have faith in oneself. And then also sharing your work is very humbling, because
Mm-hmm.
not everyone will get it. Just like I am not for everyone, my work isn't either. You know, I think it's important for people to know that if someone reads your story or hears you read it at a public reading or something, and it doesn't resonate with them, it doesn't mean anything about you as a writer or your story. It just means they're not for you. So it can put us in very vulnerable places at times, and also lead us to, like I said earlier, a part of me that I didn't even know existed, right? These repressed memories of abuse. So yeah, it's very humbling, because it does take us deep inside ourselves. And I think that's a lot of times why people resist writing, because I think it's some part of us knows, oh, I'm going to find something in there that it's going to make me uncomfortable. So I think it really keeps us honest, which is always humbling, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And I want to go back to something you said. So, yeah, that aspect of actually sharing your writing, that's incredibly vulnerable. And like you said, it's not going to be for everybody. Maybe some people won't understand it. Maybe some people just will not like it. So, how can people that want to get into writing and want to share their work, whether it's a blog or a public reading, I mean, they're going to get criticisms. They might end up, getting some trolls that are saying some nasty things and calling them horrible writers, should never pick up a pen again, that kind of thing. How can somebody deal with that kind of criticism and try not to take it personally? Because writing is such a personal thing, and you're really putting your life, your soul out there, and for it to get criticized, that can be incredibly crushing.
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, I'm a Cancer. I am so sensitive to things. I mean, we're known for having this kind of like tough shell. And I really relate to this. I am like that to the world, but oh my goodness, inside, whole other story. And I mean, I spent much of my life helping other people write, and my own writing has taken a back seat. So I've been published, but not widely, I will say. I'm 63 now, and my goal is to the rest of my life, for as long as I have left, is devoted to my writing. I am very sensitive to lots of things, and I've had trolls come after me on social media, not for my writing, but my ideas on things. And it's very shocking to my system. It's not easy, but I have things in place that I do to take care of myself if and when those things happen. I know what works for me. I think it's a combination of that, like having ways to protect ourselves. Then we start getting into like mindset, right? Having practical ways to protect ourselves, and then finding ways to think about comments like that people who just want to be harmful put out there. And whether it's like affirmations, reciting mantras over and over to ourselves, and just remembering that this thing that we've created comes from our soul, and it's very precious to us. When someone treats it badly, it is very hurtful. And so first, I think to know that that's just a natural human response, and it's okay. But then do what we can to not linger on it and feel too beat up by it, especially, and absolutely not let us or not prevent us from writing. And some people, I will say this, some people just have bad taste. I mean, honestly, just know that too. Like, some people have bad taste, and they wouldn't know a good story if they just wouldn't. I think it's a balance of doing that. And I'm still affected by things, but I also am much better at taking things in stride than I used to be. And I think it just takes practice. And it's a matter of knowing that we might feel beat up in the beginning for a while. Let me add this. A great way to deal with this feeling is to start submitting work to journals and magazines.
Okay.
Because I'm telling you, you will get way more rejections than you get acceptances. That helped me a lot. I view that part of submitting my work for publication just as part of my job as a writer. And when the rejection comes back, I'm just like, okay, on to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of starts to build up that callus or that thick skin, of like, oh, someone doesn't want this, but it doesn't mean anything. I would say that's a great way to start kind of developing that thick skin that we have to have.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great tip to actually submit and put your work out there. And I think that is hard and it is a challenge. But I think also how you spoke about how writing humbles you. I think that because it is such a long process of writing and creating this work that's from your soul, I think because it is such a challenge and so difficult, that it might even build your confidence and self-esteem to know, hey, I did something very, very difficult. I did it through all these, trolls and criticisms and getting rejected, but I put it out there. I could do other hard things in my life as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I was in filmmaking for a while. I'm thinking about kind of dipping back into it a little bit, but also for the purpose of telling stories. And my first film that I made I was studying in grad school, I was studying feminist confessional film. And so I made one for my thesis project. And it was a very personal story about me and my life. Oh my goodness, did I get lots of pushback on that?
Wow.
It was shocking to me. And I was, yeah, very vulnerable and it was very humbling. A lot of people did not get what I was doing in it, but then a lot of people did. And absolutely, that's the very first time. And that was like, I don't know, 20-ish years ago. That's when I first realized, oh my gosh, like you said, you can do this hard thing and get to the other side of it. And I'm still okay. And I'm even better and stronger for it. The self-doubt is very common. And after that film, I made another film. I had people write to me after they saw it and tell me how it changed their life.
Wow.
One woman said she had not had the courage to leave her relationship until she saw the film. And then she did it. And a man who was there said he had never confessed to anyone before that he was trans. And he felt okay writing and telling me that after seeing it. And so just know that, and I would say this to anybody who has stories to tell in any medium, there are people out there who need to hear what you have to say. I say this in my copy on my website, but I absolutely believe this, that everybody has meaningful stories and brilliant ideas inside them. For all the naysayers and all the people who might put down whatever work you might produce for whatever reason, there are people out there who will be changed by it. I don't know. To me, that means something. And it just really kind of overwhelms in a good way all the negatives,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That is so powerful. And I love that. Thank you so much, Johnnie, for being here today. I really appreciate it. This was fantastic. I love speaking with you about the power of writing and how it could heal the world and ourselves. Can you tell everyone where to find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will say this, I am shifting gears a little bit. So my website does not reflect these changes, but you can find me at johnnymazzocco.com. Like I said, I'm still working with people, but in a different way. You can learn about what I do there. I'm also on Instagram. My handle is just my name, Johnnie Mazzocco. And I also have a blog that is kind of quiet right now, but I'm going to be waking it back up, and it's called Writing Through the Body. And then if you're curious about the magazine and want to submit your work, I would love to receive it. And that is Dark Moon Lilith. That's Lilith press.com.
Fantastic. And all of those links, everyone, will be in the show notes. So you can go check out Johnnie. Johnnie, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Johnny, thank you so much for coming on today to speak with me about writing and how it can improve people's lives, how it can impact other people. I think this was such an important episode. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. As somebody who loves to write, but don't particularly feel like I'm a good writer, I loved talking with Johnny and gaining her perspective. I think she has so much wisdom and truths about writing that I think it's important to instill in us. And I just want to say too, the part about us talking about the criticism and the trolls and just getting feedback and rejections, I think that that's so important to talk about because I think that does hold a lot of people back. And I'm going to be honest, I'm a screenwriter. I've taken a break as of right now, but I have many scripts that I've written, shorts and feature films. And when I started sending them out, I was getting a lot of rejections, obviously. And I actually wrote a children's book and I sent that out to so many publishers and I got rejections, rejections, rejections. And it was really hard. And I sent one of my short scripts out for feedback and I got it was very good feedback. But at the time, I took it so personally. And I vividly remember laying in bed at night under the covers. My head was under the comforter, and I was reading this email on feedback of my screenplay, and I was hysterically crying. This was years ago, but I was crying, tears streaming down my face, sobbing, reading this feedback. And I felt it was constructive criticism, and the feedback was very good. But at that time, I took it so personally. And all I could think was, I'm a horrible writer. I shouldn't be writing. This was terrible. I shouldn't send my work out to anybody. It sucks. I'm a sucky writer. I'm not worth being a writer. I mean, I had all these negative thoughts and I was like, I need to just quit and give up before I even really started. And so I know it's really hard for people and it's a very, very vulnerable thing to put your work out there. And, since then I've gotten feedback. Now, when I send work out, I get feedback regularly and it doesn't affect me that way at all anymore. I mean, I think that was the first and only time I cried when I got feedback. I think when I was sending out my children's book to publishers, I cried once because I just felt so overwhelmed. All I got was rejections and I did end up giving up. I didn't send it out anymore and I never opened it back up again. I did quit. I was very young at that time. That was before the screenplay feedback. But so I totally understand how that feels and how that can prevent you from putting yourself out there and prevent you from even writing, picking up a pen or opening your laptop. So I definitely understand, but I loved what Johnny said. And it really does. I agree. It really does build your thick skin. It does thicken your skin. It gets easier over time. I promise you. So if you are thinking about writing, I think it's such an important ritual. It's such an important practice. It's definitely something that I struggle with maintaining consistently. So, a few things too. I loved Johnny's tips of creating a ritual and kind of figuring out how to prioritize that time. I mean, you heard her. She said that she would take months with clients to even get to that point of writing. It takes a lot of work and effort, but if you want to, it is worth it. Something that I did, I actually joined a writer's group, which I absolutely loved. Unfortunately, I had to stop going to the writers group because I went back to work full time and we did meet Wednesday mornings. And at that time now I'm at work. So I haven't been able to go to that one anymore, but I found it to be incredibly helpful that I am going to be looking for one that meets in the evenings. But we met over Zoom. They do meet in person now at a cafe, but they were meeting over Zoom because of COVID. And we would talk for the first 10 minutes and then we would just write for about 50 minutes. And then we would meet again for 10 minutes just to say how it's going, chatting, sharing what we're working on. If we have any, if we're stuck or have any slumps, anything like that, writer's block, we would help each other through it. And then we would write for another 50 minutes. So this was a fantastic way to build in writing accountability. And it only met once a week, but I wrote so much. I mean, I wrote more than I had written in such a long time. So if you want to look into joining accountability, writing groups, things like that. I found it on meetup.com, which I'll put that link in the show notes. You can find any meetups on there. A lot of them meet virtually, they meet in person, whatever in your area. So that's a great thing that you can do too, to dip your feet in writing and actually be held accountable. So thank you so much, Johnny. I loved speaking with you. I think this was such an important episode. And so I'm going to give you guys a bit of homework tonight. If you have been interested in writing, but you have not done it, this is your homework. I want you to either grab your laptop or a notebook and a pen, and I want you to write for 20 minutes tonight. Stream of consciousness. So that is basically just writing whatever comes to your mind. You just keep writing, keep writing, keep writing. As Johnnie said, you could even write, I'm stuck, I'm stuck, I'm stuck until something comes. So 20 minutes, I want you to write nonstop, whatever comes to your mind, just to open the floodgates, just to open up that opportunity to be creative. So try that out. Let me know how it goes. I hope it goes well. This is your opportunity to get started on your writing ritual that maybe you have been wanting to implement into your life. Thanks so much for listening. I will talk to you next week. Have a fantastic week.